Welcome, everybody. This is Mr. Mike Liberatore. He currently serves as the general manager for the Dunedin Blue Jays. Mike's the leader of the high A affiliate for the Toronto Blue Jays, and he oversees the spring training operations for the franchise. So welcome, Mike. Thanks for joining today.
Thanks for having me.
So to start, can you tell us a little bit about your roots? How'd you get into baseball?
So I grew up upstate New York, huge sports fan, huge baseball fan, grew up in a minor league town, had tickets to the Rochester Red Wings, which was the AAA affiliate of the Orioles at the time, the Rochester Amherst, who were the AHL for the Sabres. Just kind of grew up around sports. In high school, we moved to Florida and wound up playing college baseball and kind of got my start through that. And then my career path, I did not go right into baseball immediately. I went into sales originally and stayed in that for 6 or 7 years. And then eventually an opportunity opened up where I decided I wanted to get back into sports and called around as, some of my friends that were working in the industry and asked them, I had friends that were scouts and coaches and front office and things like that, and just kind of picked their brain about, who liked what about what they did, and started looking around for jobs. And a friend I talked to mentioned that something had opened up with the Blue Jays, and wound up got my foot in the door for an interview, and it just kind of a small world. I had some contacts through my time in junior college and college that were now with the Blue Jays or affiliated with the organization in some way, and vouched for me, and it wound up working out well. And I've been here going on 9 years now.
That's awesome. It's unique. You mentioned you played college baseball. I played college ball too. I played at University of Tampa. Where did you play?
I played junior college locally right here at St. Pete. It was St. Pete Junior College at the time, and then I played my last 3 years at Embry-Riddle University in Daytona.
Oh, awesome. So a little bit more about you and what you're passionate about. What motivates you? What drives you? What are your career passions in what you do?
I think the favorite thing for a lot of us is that we're missing right now is the game days. That's what we love. Showing up at the ballpark. It's hard to have sometimes you got to remind yourself when you're so busy working that you're showing up at a ballpark to work every day. It can't be that bad. If your 12-year-old self knew that's what you were doing, they wouldn't let you complain about it. So that's what I really love is the game days. In my role, I get to bring on a lot of staff that are their first season, full season with a team, or maybe the first big step in their career. So I really like bringing people on board and developing and seeing them develop and helping grow our operation down in Florida as well.
Man, that's awesome. I think that's great that you're really team oriented like that. You mentioned you got your foot in the door. I think your first role was a sales role, and you worked your way all the way up to becoming the general manager. What did you learn in that experience, and how did you work your way up?
So I started in corporate partnerships for the organization when I started with the Blue Jays, and it was a great way to learn. Dunedin's a really unique community, very close-knit, small downtown, very cool place. So through working in sales, I got to know all the restaurants, business owners, things like that in the town, which was a great way to start off and kind of get to meet people. I've been on the board of directors for the Chamber of Commerce, I think, for the last 4 years now. So started out in corporate partnerships, but in the minor league side of baseball, or even spring training staffs, Florida State League, things like that, you're typically working with a very small group and everyone wears a lot of hats. So I tended to kind of gravitate to, if there was something extra to do or something that wasn't getting done or somebody may not have the skill set to do it, I tried to pick up all the extra work that I could and help out where I could and learn everything I could, whether it was ticketing or sports, sponsorships or operations or whatever it was. I, tried to have my hand in a little bit of everything. And eventually, after, a few years, the assistant general manager job opened up. I was able to get that, and then wound up being promoted, a couple years later to general manager. So I think if we were playing, I think this would be my fifth season as a general manager, if I'm counting correctly.
And that's awesome. Just a curious question for me on the business side. Do you know about what percentage the tickets versus the corporate partnerships versus any other revenues are in the business side of baseball and minor league baseball?
Oof, that's a great question. And our revenue gets broken up so much between spring training and then our minor league season. We almost look at our seasons that way. So in terms of the revenue, our big buckets are ticket revenue. It's probably out of Florida. What we do is our number one. closely followed by corporate partnerships. We have we're owned by obviously our parent club, and we operate the Toronto Blue Jays spring training out of Florida. So we have a lot of Canadian corporate partnerships that are integrated into Florida. So just from televised games and things like that. So that's probably our second highest pot of revenue, and then concessions and retail would probably round out kind of our top four areas of focus as far as revenue generation.
Awesome. Thanks for that insight. Can you tell me a little bit more about your going on 9 years now with the Blue Jays? Do you have any big highlights or moments that you really stood out to you during your experience?
The first thing that comes to mind is in 2017. So at the time, the Dunedin Blue Jays had been an affiliate for the Toronto Blue Jays, I think, for 33 years at that time, and had never won a championship in the Florida State League. So it's only a 12-team league. So in 2017, that was the year the hurricane came in, and we wound up having to cancel the second round of the playoffs. So we had one round of playoffs. We had a very good team, and we played. There was one home game, and then then you would play the second two on the road as a doubleheader. So, 2017 we had Kevin Biggio, Bo Bichette, Vlad Guerrero Jr., Danny Jansen. The team was just loaded. So we actually lost the first game at home. So we knew that we would have had to sweep on the road the next night, and all of us are thinking about boarding up our houses and evacuating and all that stuff. But also playing for the championship. So we took the whole team on the road that night to go watch the doubleheader. And with everybody kind of in evacuation mode, really the only people in the crowd were the staffs of the teams that were fully invested in it. And we wound up sweeping in comebacks both games of the doubleheader and winning that championship and celebrating. So that was a really fun moment. It's probably and sharing it with the whole staff that had worked so hard that year. The organization was great. They got everybody rings. So we had a guy that'd been a ticket taker for 15, 20 years with the organization, get a ring, our PA announcer, everybody was like so invested in it. So that was a lot of great moments over the 9 years, but that one, really stands out. A lot of memorable players on that team that are now in the majors. Great coaching staff and a great staff that we had for our front office staff as well.
That's awesome. It sounds like you have a great organization all the way around. And that, I'm thinking back to that time, I can remember how stressful that was for our family, and to share that cool baseball moment in the midst of that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
A little more about your role, and in what ways do you kind of cooperate with other local affiliates during the minor league season? And do you have much contact with the parent club? How closely do you coordinate with these other franchises and their teams?
Yeah. So as far as our parent club, so we're owned by our parent club. So myself and our staff, we're Toronto Blue Jays employees. So we're in the unique situation where our ownership and most of our staff resides and works in another country, which creates a lot of logistical challenges and things like that. So at the core, we're trying to take what our parent club envisions to operate spring training in our minor league season, and then we're the people that are on the ground here in Florida to execute that. So our involvement is almost a daily basis, conversations in some way, whether for myself, I'm balancing between the business side for some time, and then I'm balancing between the player operations, where you might be talking to your coaching staff or your scouting director or trainers or things like that to try to make the player side run smooth. So it's a lot of back and forth in my role specifically. And then the Florida State League as a minor league is so unique, because we're the only league that has spring training and a minor league season. Out in the Cactus League, you don't really have that, where there's a high A team that continues after spring training ends. So in the Florida State League, we all are in communication very regularly, because we have such a unique role across the span of minor league baseball. So talk to a lot of the other GMs, especially in the minor league season. We're in contact, daily, weekly basis. And then a little bit less so with our other affiliates, in Lansing or Vancouver or Buffalo or New Hampshire, wherever they might be. But we're in contact with, probably a little bit less often than the group in the great Florida State League here.
That's great. So you deal with a lot of different challenges then, dealing with all those different facets of the operation. What are some of the biggest challenges you face in your role as a minor league GM?
I think, that's kind of it, is just balancing time. time management. You might be talking about, in your minor league season, you might be dealing with, what the spring training ticket prices are going to be the following year while you have, a game going on where you've got a promotional night in the minor league season where you've got, a few thousand kids coming out to the ballpark to get backpacks. And, so you're kind of playing both sides of it, and obviously, and down here, our biggest challenge, the hardest thing as a GM in the minor league is probably the weather. It's always nobody wants to be the guy when the storms are rolling in and it's a 50-50 coin flip, and both teams have their number one pick ready to start, and nobody wants to burn their pitcher. Nobody wants to be the one to make the call of, yes, we're definitely starting, we're going to be all right, or we're going to go in a delay or whatever it might be. So especially late in the year, in the Florida State League, I'm sure it's not much different elsewhere. The weather is, if there was something that I didn't know I would need to be prepared for in a general manager's role, it would be trying to be an amateur meteorologist.
Man, that's fun. That's pretty funny. Are there any specific keys to success in your role?
Communication is the biggest one, because you're dealing with so many different parties, different interests. You're talking about, spring training on the major league side, then minor league games. You've got your own, you've got a game day staff of your ticket takers and ushers and that type of group. And then your full-time staff that's, marketing and selling tickets and doing sponsorships and all that stuff. And then with the coaches, I think that's one of the things, every year it's a big focus for me on the minor league side to, this would be my 5th year with a 5th different manager, which is kind of, par for the course at our level. So, as early as I can in spring training, sitting down, getting to work with those coaches, learn what they're looking for, how they want to do things. Everybody has a different way of going about things and different expectations of what they're going to want from me as the general manager. So, communication is the key, and, over communicating if I have to, and trying to lay things out very organized. It's a small group, so we try to be very, efficient and run a very lean operation. So it's got to be very organized and get everybody on the same page and pulling the same end of the rope, so to speak.
Yeah, that's great. I think communication is super important, no matter what organization or role or area you're in. And the more you can over communicate, like you said, I think that helps everybody on your team. Kind of building off that, as the leader of your organization, how do you try to empower others? You mentioned that everybody wears a lot of different hats and there's a lot of different opportunities. How do you try to provide those for other people in your organization already?
Yeah, I think empowerment's definitely one of the values of the organization. It's one of our 5 core values that we talk about. So sometimes in a management role, it's you got to be willing to delegate and let something go. Understand that somebody may not do something the exact same way that you would do it, but trust. We put a lot of time and effort into hiring people and getting the right people. It's kind of a small family. We want to, if we bring someone into that, we put a lot of weight into that. So I think that's the biggest thing is, you go through the hiring process, and it's a long process for us to make sure we got the right person. So from that point, trusting, making sure that they have the tools and trusting them to, make their own decisions and understand that, hey, I'm not going to be in the box office all day, every day. The person, that's managing it is, and I need to let them, kind of manage things the way that they see fit, even if it's different, than how I would do it. So I think just get more out of people, allowing them to, letting them know what decisions they can make and letting them do things to make the organization better.
Awesome. I think that's great. Another question for you. How have you tried to motivate your staff or your team during this difficult time in baseball? I know a lot of stuff's changing. Everybody's working remotely. How do you try to keep everybody motivated?
Man, it's probably been the hardest part, and talking to a lot of teams, and I mean it's probably everyone's number one challenge of with the uncertainty right now of not knowing if you're going to have a season, when a season's going to start, what the season's going to look like. It's challenging. We're lucky. There's a group in Toronto that has a kind of a task force of our work from home task force. I think it's called the Safer at Home Task Force. And they've done a really good job of helping a lot of us transition. Most of us have never worked from home. We're used to being at the ballpark, used to being on the go, staying busy. So And something we talked about, we found out in the middle of the spring training game that spring training was going to be suspended. So we kind of came in the next morning and talked and said, like, hey, it's safer for all of us to be at home. Make sure you get all the stuff that you're going to need. We know at that time, we knew it would be 2 weeks, but we prepared for it might be longer. And had some discussions about, okay, we've never had this type of time on our hands before. So let's try to find all the things that we always said we don't have enough time to do and start tackling those projects. And really, besides that, trying to find the balance of like, okay, we have these things to do. We're working as a team. How do we organize that? How do we follow up when we can't see each other in the hall or have the quick conversation? So balancing that and then trying to keep everybody, sane a little bit. So, we have our staff happy hours, and we just did an organization trivia night,
Nice.
Trying to kind of, mix things up and do some different things. We've got a team battleship tournament bracket going right now that still continues. So balancing the work with, some of the fun stuff that we would normally be doing if we're at the ballpark. We have a conference call with the staff every morning. So even if there's not necessarily an update or a project, just so we get to see everybody's face, talk. I try to call all of my staff on video once a week at least, just as everyone's dealing. You've got people that are home with their kids, for the first time. They're trying to go through schooling. You've got people that are in furlough situations. Everyone has a different challenge on the staff. So trying to call everybody, just see how they're doing, make sure that their mental wellness is in a good place, find opportunities where we can help each other, where we can help in the community, doing some fundraising efforts and things like that. So that's been kind of the biggest challenge, is just, trying to make sure everybody's taken care of, find out what's making everybody tick, and doing the best we can to kind of have a normal work situation as much as possible, but also acknowledge, like, hey, this isn't normal. This isn't, what we're all used to. We're all struggling to adapt on this. There's nothing wrong with that. It's, part of the process we're all going through. So it's been challenging, but we've got a great group, and everybody's, working hard and brings a positive, outlook to it every morning. And most importantly, just, being safe. I think that's the biggest thing, is, checking in on the, the health of our staff, making sure that they're social distancing, making sure that, they have, food and toilet paper and paper towels and all these things, and trying to find out if everyone has what they need to make this work.
And that's great. It sounds like you have a well-rounded approach toward the situation, and I'm sure your team certainly appreciates it. One last question for you for our talk today. Do you have any ideas or thoughts about where the next edge in baseball might go?
It's a good question. I think everybody's, gut is to go to the data analytics, all that type of stuff that we all talk about every day. We use it on the business side constantly, from, trying to find out how to price our tickets to what people want to buy when they're in the ballpark. I mean, we survey everything. So I think that's a big part of it. But I think probably the bigger piece is all the data that we're collecting is going back to communication. Like, okay, how do you have all this information? How do you use it? How do you make people understand it? How do you actually implement it into something that's successful? So it's been interesting to even read interviews with our coaches now, guys that would never, try to do anything, virtually or by phone, or want to travel to cities to talk to guys. And now you have, people coaching bullpen sessions through video, or critiquing, in that way, and, FaceTime and all these other things. So it's been interesting to see. So I would imagine that there's going to be a lot of residual use of technology to things that we're doing by necessity right now, being far apart from each other, kind of learning that, hey, this isn't so bad sometimes. Maybe sometimes we don't all need to be in the same place. We can get stuff done. So I think obviously technology, data, all that analytics is probably the answer. But like for me, it's how do you actually, there's a new tool every day to track information, but how can you communicate it, and how can you actually use it to make your organization better? Because all the information in the world's not going to do a lot if you can't, implement it to an action in somehow.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time today. I appreciate you taking time to join this talk and share your insights and experiences as GM of the Blue Jays.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the talk.
Yes, sir.